Hello and welcome to the last edition of Hangin' with Mr. Cooper. Now we go to our first question from Nathan Smith.
I have a question for the Coopster. Why does Mr. Coy know everything? He's a living encyclopedia.
Nathan, Mr. Coy doesn't know everything. And yet, because he is a very competent teacher, Mr. Coy continues to try to learn all the time, which is a good lesson for all the graduating seniors. Continue to learn all your life.
Mr. Cooper, how come the downstairs rooms begin with 100s and the upstairs room begin with 200?
Melanie, you've asked a question regarding our school. Rooms with 100 at the beginning mean they're on the first floor, 200 mean they're on the second floor.
Mr. Cooper, why did the stock market crash in 1933?
Ben, you've asked a very complicated question about the stock market crash. Let me try to answer it as Mr. Costello explained it to me by way of 4 factors. First of all, there was an over-speculation by amateurs, people investing in the stock market who didn't have adequate funds to support their investments. Secondly, there were big financiers like J.P. Morgan and John D. Rockefeller who were a little bit, they didn't like the amateurs in the stock market, and so they simply sold or dumped a large volume of shares, which then caused or precipitated the crash. Thirdly, we had a mood or an attitude, a psychological effect that occurred at that time. As the crash occurred, people stopped buying things, and so that affected the supply-demand relationship. As a result, you had shelves full of merchandise, but people weren't buying, an overproduction, if you want. And lastly, we didn't have the safety net then as we do today. For example, the FDIC that the banks have, also unemployment benefits, welfare, and so forth. Even in the 1980s, we've had larger drops in the stock market than we did back then, but it didn't affect us quite as much now. But there is one other factor, Ben, and you need to listen to Mr. Costello. He's going to give you one other important factor about that crash that occurred then.
Ben, it was 1929. It crashed in 1929, Ben.
Mr. Cooper, why am I the only one on here that is not a senior?
Kyle, you're the only non-senior asking questions, and I'll tell you what, we're going to wait till you're a senior before we answer one of your questions. You've tried very hard this year, but we're going to wait till you're a senior.
Mr. Cooper, how come we don't get out a week earlier in school like the seniors did back in the 70s?
Steve, you've asked the question why the seniors don't get out early like they did back in the 1970s. It's because the state requirements have changed. As you remember, 5-10 years ago, the state required 180 days, the snow makeup days, extracurricular events couldn't be interfering with school activities or canceled earlier or early release. Some of those changes occurred, and that also affected the seniors getting out early. But besides all that, we certainly wish you well, Steve, as you graduate and the graduating class of 1990.